No Further Information, a podcast about cops and those assholes who put anime stickers all over their cars. This episode focuses on cops. Today we'll talk to the most boring guy in the world. I'm kidding, of course, he's actually the most boring guy in the universe. But he does a thankless job that maintains your quality of life. Environmental crimes investigator. He's methodical, pensive, and he functions on only one setting, getting the job done. We started as classmates and then grew to love each other. Sexually, of course. This is Officer Bob, a Texas investigator.
My name's Officer Bob. I'm a police officer with an investigative unit for a sheriff's office in Texas.
You used to work down south, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And when you were out there, fair to say more rural than here?
Yes.
About the same par for course?
I would say it's the population is about 1/3
Down there, right?
in that county.
Because the current county is also growing very rapidly.
Oh,
so
I'd say it's half incorporated.
Right, yeah.
But
so
well
down
over 1 million.
Yeah. So down south is different, the same. You like it better. You like it better up here.
I like it better up here. People, the standards are much higher. There's more curbs on the road. There's more street signs up here. There's certain municipalities out there that have the pole up there, but the street sign's gone, and I don't know, nobody.
You just have to fucking guess where you are.
Pretty much.
You're like, I made a left and not a right.
Yeah, and so on the flip side, though, what's better down there is all the streets are in a grid out the county, whereas where I'm currently now, it's like a giant bowl of spaghetti.
Sure. Yeah.
So I mean,
cities. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it has its pluses and minuses. And, of course, the pay up here and the benefits are night and day much better.
And so when you're down south, you say, oh, yeah, it's an entirely different animal. Give me a good southern Texas cop story.
Oh.
How to chase a fucking cow, sexual assault on a pig or something. Or, chicken came to file a report with you and said someone stole his eggs every day.
Well, when I was actually, because I did work for a city at one time in a neighboring county to county. I was working for a city called One night I got a call and we are not CAD dispatched.
How do you get dispatched?
Over the radio.
Well,
they say
but you have a CAD.
No. We have a computer to do reports that's linked to the department.
So you can't pull up your CAD and look at the call.
That's correct.
And route, arrive, comments.
That's correct. Now you can run a driver's license.
Will that get attached to the call?
Not necessarily. Well, if you run it through the dispatch, yes.
Yes,
so,
we're saying the same thing. So if you run somebody, there's no way to attribute.
No, if I call up dispatch and say run so and so, then I assume. But
that's so strange.
We don't. But see, their dispatch down there is run out of the sheriff's office, whereas I was working for the city.
Yeah, I understand that.
So,
but it's odd that you're even more making my point. A sheriff's office should have a CAD,
right? And they still don't to this day
in 2024.
In 2024.
So you're down.
And of course, some people are like, "How do you know where to go?" It's like, well, you have to listen and you have to know the streets.
Yeah, I mean, and my concern isn't even how do you know where you go, because I mean, it's not like I'd say any good cop doesn't rely on the GPS on the MDC, but the bigger issue is call details. Call history,
sure,
running plates, cars, and guns through the system. Through the CAD to attach it to the job, to the call.
You got to do it yourself.
That's
some of that you have to do yourself.
That's some fucking. I mean, I got on the job in 2006, and we had that shit. So that's like some fucking 1990 shit.
So yeah, I mean,
but you know what? I will say, counties like everything done over the radio,
right?
Whereas in larger cities, I was trained to shut the fuck up. Stay off the goddamn radio. And so it was funny because anytime my municipality would get someone who used to be a cop at some buttfuck, county elbow or something, they were the talkers, they wouldn't shut the fuck up on the radio.
And they have them down there.
Yeah. So You're working down there, and you had to arrest a cow who was fucking a goat. Is that what you said?
So
was that the story you were telling?
That's not the story I was telling.
Oh, okay.
Somebody calls up, or I'm sorry, a dispatch calls me up and says, 1208, we need you to head to, I can't remember what the address was, 123 Main Street. The complainant says that some relatives have come over to their house. She had just given a pill to her husband, and these relatives won't leave. Could you come over there and get rid of them? So I was like, absolutely. I had a feeling I knew what the pill was. A Viagra, obviously. So I get over there, and sure enough, that's exactly what she gave him. And she's ready to get down with him.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, these relatives had come over unexpectedly 2 weeks before Christmas and wouldn't leave. Well, they'd already left by the time.
Why did you know that was the pill that she gave?
What other pill would she have given him to be concerned about what's going on afterwards?
It could have been drugs. It could have been illicit substance. But
I had a hunch.
You dirty little fuck.
I know.
You dirty little pervert. You just want to see a bunch of old people fucking.
Yeah. That was a pretty entertaining one.
So how do you handle that?
They'd already left. So
I guess the pill wore off.
Right.
How long you been on the job?
Approximately 10 years.
What do you think is the difference between a sheriff's office and a city?
So we're going to deal with a lot more rural issues. Also, of course, we can technically cover the entire county inside and outside any municipalities or cities. But typically, we try to focus on all the areas outside city limits.
Now, you happen to work for a fairly densely populated county. So do you ever butt heads with the local cops?
I have with a previous agency that was also a sheriff's office in another part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing major, nothing that I'd say would cause us that would hinder the job in any way.
And nobody fighting on the side of the highway?
I've never seen anything like that.
See, my limited experience with sheriff's offices, because I've been a city cop my whole career, or I was a city cop my whole career. My biggest thing with sheriff's offices, no matter how big the county is or small, they're fucking lazy. Can you dispel that rumor?
I cannot dispel that rumor, at least not with previous experience with a previous agency. Now, my current agency, I would say reminds me a lot of a city agency, as in
Mm-hmm.
most of the officers, not all of them, are young, but even the older ones, I would say most of them are not lazy at all, and they're actually out there working just as hard as any other city officer, or any city officer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I have seen that firsthand with other agencies, one that I did work with, and others that I've seen up close that I did not work with. And so, unfortunately, a lot of sheriff's offices have a lot of retired on the job types.
I can't speak for your agency, but it seemed to me that was most of the demographic of the sheriff's office.
I can't really argue with that. Unfortunately, I could say that my current agency, I rarely, which you're going to see that with almost any reasonably large agency, or any small agency, unfortunately. But current agency, very, very seldom.
Do you remember your first collar?
Yes. Some guy who was about 6'5", a former semi-professional football player who was every bit of 290 pounds solid, had marched into his ex-girlfriend's house, pushed her down the bed, and insisted upon having intercourse with her.
You don't have to PC it. He raped her.
Yeah. Well, no, he wanted to. He didn't.
Okay.
And so she got away from him and called us. And, of course, we get over there. He's still there. And, I mean, this guy, we had to give him like 3 handcuffs to cuff him.
Big dude.
Huge. I mean, enormous. The FTO I had was like 130 pounds soaking wet, not intimidating at all, very little command presence, really no business being an FTO or a cop.
Now, you're tall, but at the time, how big are you?
Nothing compared to this dude. And so there was 3 of us there, and I don't think 3 of us could have taken him. But what he was scared of is he was scared of getting that taser because of all that muscle. And so that FTO...
They know about that fucking taser.
He was respecting that because my FTO was had a death grip on his taser.
Yeah,
I didn't have one because I hadn't been there long enough.
They know about that fucking taser.
Right. And of course, so anyway, we took him to jail, trouble-free. And of course, they sit me down to do the report. And I'd worked for a loss prevention for JCPenney for about 3.5 years, so I kind of knew how to a little bit write a report. And
that's like saying
he goes home.
That's like saying when I was 6, my dad taught me how to ride my bicycle with just one training wheel. So I went ahead and joined motocross.
There you go.
It was the same exact thing. It was the same exact thing.
So I knew how to write a narrative.
What'd you charge him with?
Burglary with attempt.
Oh, not his house.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And so
good.
And so because there was no penetration, he did assault her by pushing her down the bed, of course. And there was he stated his intentions, so I guess you could say that's the attempt.
Yeah.
And so anyway, my FTO decides, well, it's my shift's over, so I'm going home. Have fun writing this huge report. And so 2.5 hours later, I finally finished it. And after some other senior officer came in and said, yeah, you don't need this, you don't need that, or that. And of course, now if I had to do a report like that, it'd probably take me 15 minutes, if that. But, it's amazing what you learn in 10 years.
So when you're in training, this is your first caller, and you're looking at this guy, are you thinking, I'm going to have to beat this guy's ass?
I'm thinking
or he's going to beat my ass.
I'm thinking this is going to be a rough night if it starts getting physical.
And this is your foray into police work.
Correct. Now, I've been into a number of scuffles doing loss prevention.
Sure.
I've been dragged by a car. I've had 300-pound guy sitting on top of me, which is the last place you want to be. Best thing to do is just reach up and tag him in the eyes, Three Stooges style, and that got him right off.
I like it.
Thank you. I've had road rash all over my arms and legs. I've gotten in more fights as loss prevention than I ever did as a cop.
Sure.
So
you take the good with the bad.
You take the good with the bad.
What kind of crimes do you investigate?
I primarily investigate environmental at the moment. I also assist with pretty much any other crime that comes our way as far as crimes against adults or property crimes. And I also do, I'm backup for crime scene investigation.
So this is when I play the part of the audience and I go, environmental? That sounds boring as fuck.
Can be.
Give me, what's a good environmental investigation story that would make the public go, you know what, I'm glad Officer Bob's out there.
So a few years back, I was actually out of state, and I got a call from one of our patrol officers who indicated that someone had illegally dumped about 15, 16 steel 55-gallon drums in front of someone's property out in the county on the side of a county road. And some of them were full, most of them were empty, some of them were damaged, most of them weren't.
How did he know they were full?
You can feel that there's something.
So she
in
went
there.
up to it and jiggled the can?
Right. A drum. This is like a 55
yeah,
gallon.
But Jesus Christ.
Right.
Fucking go up there and jiggle the drum.
And so she's like, what do I do? And she said somebody called out the county fire marshal, or no, the fire department. And so they came and checked it out, and they determined, well, it's nothing super hazardous. It's something that doesn't belong there, certainly, but it's not anything that's going to injure anybody by being close to it.
Do you know what it was?
Oh, yeah, I know what it is. I didn't then, but I do now. And so when I got back, I drove over there, or I looked at the photographs that were sent to me by the patrol officer, and I was like, all right, well, they're still over there. No, I take that back. They had gotten hauled over to... No, I take that back. They'd been left there. So I was like, all right. So I go over there, check it out, and I find an address on at least 2 of them. And I find also some MSDS labels on several of them.
All right, let's pause here for a second. So MSDS, material safety data sheets, but are there registration numbers on the barrels where you can ID the address or something?
It was a shipping label.
Okay.
So we had a recipient. And it's
smart.
It's an address in the county. And so Public Works picks these drums up and transports them to our service center. And so I start doing some research on this address, and it's a nice size, probably 10-acre property on the east side of our county. And I'm looking at the guy, pull up his driver's license, or identified who owns it, and pull up his driver's license, and I can, I can tell by looking at it, this guy didn't dump this. That's my gut feeling. He didn't dump this. He probably hired somebody to dispose of it, probably legally or with legal intentions.
Right.
And then they made the poor decision. So I print out some photographs. That's usually what I do when I go talk with somebody at their house and say, are you responsible for this, after showing them the photograph? Anyway, I do that, and super nice guy, very extremely forthcoming and honest, or seemingly honest about everything. And turned out he was. He said, yeah, that stuff, I hired somebody to haul that stuff off. He's a retired EDS executive. That's an old company here in Dallas.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, it was an old tech company based in Texas.
All their employees had to be clean shaven. They had to have black pants, white dress shirt with a button-down collar, black tie, and black leather shoes with no tassels. Very strict. Ross Perot owned it. Anyway, so he says he owns his property there is an equine ranch or a horse ranch, and he has one horse left, and he's about to sell it and move to a smaller property. And so he says, this is horse fence paint, specially designed for a horse fence, because apparently horses gnaw on fences, and it tastes bad to them.
Tastes like shit to them. Yeah.
Tastes like shit to them, but at the same time, it won't harm them, and it's also resistant to the weather. So it's petroleum based, and that's the problem. That's my problem with it. If it was water based, it wouldn't be much of an issue. I said, okay, so tell me more about this. And so he says, all right. So I called up the county dump, these legally licensed solid waste disposal facility in our county, and they said, we don't take things like that.
You can call it a fucking dump.
It's a dump.
Yeah, okay.
But if you want to get technical,
you don't have to get all fucking Listen, you're not talking to the media here, okay?
Right.
It's the fucking dump.
Okay, yeah, it's the dump.
You know what? If you're a place that takes shit, then you're a dump. Okay? They don't need to get all
they all smell the same.
Yeah, you don't need to get all fucking highfalutin.
Right.
That's like when the garbage man calls himself a disposal specialist. No, you're a fucking garbage man. You're a fucking dump. Right.
So he calls them up, and they say, we don't take things like that, but here's a list of people that can take it legally. And so he calls one of them up, and they quoted him $4,500 or $5,000.
How many barrels are there?
15. Two of them are completely full.
Seems like a lot for 50 fucking barrels.
So they charge you by the barrel, and whether it's full or not, because they have to incinerate all 15 of them.
Yeah.
And so, and believe it or not, these barrels are like 20 years old, and they're still good. The two that are full, the paint's still good.
Yeah. So he calls it. So they refer him to this place,
right? And now in the meantime, so actually getting back a little bit, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I actually called up the manufacturer, and they sent me the bill of lading on this original shipment from like 20 some odd years ago. They still had that, and they sent me the current MSDS on that type of paint, and they said, yeah, it's probably still good if you feel like painting a horse fence in your spare time. And so anyway, that confirmed that it was this guy's. And so anyway, he's very forthright about everything and forthcoming. And so he says, all right, so I had this guy who had just graduated from a university in the area, and he's trying to make he has his own trash disposal company, and he had hauled off some old furniture for me about a year or so ago. So I called him up, and I told him what I had, and we agreed to a price of, I want to say $1,200. And this is all over text. And so he agreed to send someone out and pick him up. And so he doesn't meet me, but someone that I guess he hired, or his employee, met me at my property with a U-Haul. And so he picks all 15 of these things up, and he goes, I asked him, what are you going to take these? And he says, well, I live over in a city right outside of our county, a very small one, and not too far from where this gentleman's house is. And He goes, I don't know what I was going to do with him. Well, we know now what he did with him. He
He
went in the opposite direction of his house and closer to a slightly larger city in the middle of our county, and just left him on the side of the road in front of someone's property. And so anyway, I said, do me a favor, can you get me some screenshots of those text messages and give me this guy's telephone number and all that? And I said, just so I can prove that this is a text message from his number, do me a favor, delete his name off there just so the number's showing. So
That's smart.
thank you. So I get back to the office and I start doing research on him. And also he says, he also gets me a copy of the blank check, or the cash check. And so it wasn't written to the gentleman that he contacted. It's written to some female. And he goes, I called him up and I said, who do you want me to write the check out to? And so he tells me. And so I said, all right. So I wrote out the check to this, let's just go ahead and call her. So anyway, I wrote the check out to this female and I handed the check to this driver, and didn't know anything else about this until, I came knocking on his door 2 weeks later. And so I start looking at, before I've made contact with this guy, and I said, do me a favor, don't contact this guy. And I trusted he wouldn't, and I'm pretty sure he didn't. And so I started looking at what's their link between this guy that owns this company and the female. Can't find any link. One has a Latina name, one has more of a Middle Eastern name. Not that it really makes a difference. But looking at investigative databases, there's no link there's no common addresses, no common numbers. They don't own any property together. So I, of course, did a grand jury subpoena on the check to see what account it went into, or the account information, whose account it was, and it comes back to her account. And so it gives me all her information, driver's license, social security number, all that stuff. And so finally, after I got all my ducks in a row, I called this kid up, and he's like 24. And I said, my name's Investigator so-and-so, and I'm with, so-and-so department or office. And I said, your name's come up in an investigation. Would you mind coming up to the office and speaking with me about it? And he said, you can tell he's a little rattled. And he said, yes. When do you want me up there? And I said, 4:00.
He didn't say, what is this about?
No, he didn't, which I kind of found that a little odd too. But
I think he knew what it was about.
I don't think he did, because he was there at 4:00 on the dot. And at this point, after the grand jury subpoena, because it's been a good month and a half. And so I walk him back there and I said, all right, here's the deal. Explain what I do and who I am and all that. And of course, I start showing him photographs of what we found. And he says, yeah, I did get hired to haul that stuff off. He goes, I subcontracted out to the female's name. I said, well, that answers my next question. What's your link to her? And so he said, yeah, I paid her good money to haul that stuff to.
Good money out of $1,200. What did he give her? Fucking $30.
Half.
So $600 to haul away 15 barrels of hazardous materials. There's a saying in retail and law enforcement: if it's fucking too good to be true, it's probably
it is.
Yeah.
The weight on these things turned out to be about 2,300 pounds.
Yeah, because we went to from fucking $4,000 to $600.
Okay, so. So I said, okay. I said, here's the deal. I said, I can make this real easy on, because our bottom line is, if they dump something, let's say something liquid or something in a river, and we catch them in the act, then yeah, they're going to jail and we're going to prosecute, because I can't go in there and scoop that stuff out of the river. But in a case like this, we've collected them. They're sitting over the service center. So the environment's not completely damaged, but somebody's got to pay to dispose of these legally. And it's not going to be the county, and it has to be somebody. So how about the guy that, illegally dumped them? So I said, here's the deal I'll give you. I said, if you don't want to do anything, I can charge you, just for starters, with illegal dumping, a felony illegal dumping, which is a state jail felony, because these are clearly over 200 pounds, because anything that's over 200 pounds for commercial purposes, which we've got evidence of all that. I said, it's a state jail felony up to 2 years in prison. I'm going to charge you and her. And if I find out, if I can ascertain who the driver is, he's going to prison as well. Or we can go with door number 2. you hire someone who is licensed to do this and will give me in writing what they're going to do with it. I have to vet them beforehand. And once that's done and they dispose of it legally and I get proof of all this and everything's done on paper and everything's done right, then we can close this out. And he goes, can we do that? And I said, I'm glad we're on the same page. So I said, the clock's ticking. I'm not going to give you a time frame, but you need to get on this. And I said, I don't care who does this. I don't care who initiates this. I said, but one or both of you needs to figure something out. So the next day I get a call from this female who I've never spoken with before. And I may be calling to verify that this is all really happening. And I said, yeah, this is really happening. This is what I need done, blah, 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 blah. I explained to her, same thing I explained to the other guy. And she goes, well, my father owns a horse ranch. I said, no, not doing that. You already had your opportunity. I said, these have to be disposed of by a third party, a legit third party that I've got to vet. So you need to get on it. So the next day I get it. She emails me and she found a paint disposal company in the DFW area that I had already seen online and I believed to be legit. And so I looked them up independently, not the number that they gave me, even though she did give me the correct number. And I called the guy up. I explained to him who I was and what's going on. And I said, I understand you've been contacted by so-and-so. And he said, yes. And I said, okay, just make sure you've been told everything correctly. And he said, well, before I take this job, and I quoted them, I think he said $2,600 cash. He goes, before I do this, I need to come out there and inspect these barrels. Can you arrange for that? I said, absolutely. And she just tell me when you want to go. Tell me when you come out here and I'll meet you. So we met like that afternoon and he had two of his guys come out and they weighed every single barrel and it came up to like 2,400 pounds. And so he said, okay, I'm going to have to adjust my price a little bit, but it's going to be in the 2,600 range. And I told them they have to pay me in cash currency, not taking a check, not taking a credit card, and before I'll do it. And I said, I don't blame you. A day later, he calls me up and says, I'm out. She's acting really weird and cagey and shady. And he goes, I'm out. And I said, I don't blame you. I said, I appreciate your efforts. So I called him, the mail up, and I said, here's what's happening. He goes, yeah, I know. He goes, I know all about it. I know this guy backed out. We're on it. We'll find someone else. And I said, all right. So the next day, I get an email from them, and they've contacted some company out of the Carolinas that does environmental disposal work all over the country, and they've quoted them like $2,400. And so again, I looked them up independently, called up the rep that was on the whatever billing sheet they sent me, or the bid sheet that they sent me, explained to him who I was and what's going on. The guy starts laughing. He says, man, I've been doing this for like 20 years and I've never heard a story like this. I said, well, first time for everything. So he goes, is there any way I can get one of my guys that's there to come look at this stuff? And I said, absolutely. So I met this other guy there, and he's he used to own an environmental disposal company in another, I think south of Dallas County. And it's one that I've heard I know is legit, and they're all licensed by the EPA and all that stuff. And so he said, yeah, this company, what they'll do is they'll haul it over to that facility and they incinerate it. And he goes, looking at the drums, some of them are in bad condition, so they're going to have to be overpacked. And I was like, what does that mean? Basically, you got to take this 55-gallon drum and stick it in like a 60 or 70-gallon drum that's made for transportation, because if the truck has a wreck, that way they're protected. Because these drums, there's integrity issues, structural integrity issues with them. That way, if we have a wreck, we don't have to worry about this stuff spilling all over the place and getting in trouble with DPS and commercial vehicle enforcement and all that. So I said, okay. So the next morning, the rep for the Carolina company calls me up and says, so after my guy inspected that stuff, we had to up our bid a little bit. I said, okay. So we went from 2,500. He goes, with this, and that. And so we're going to have to up it up to about $13,300. I was like, okay. I mean, I want him to learn a lesson, but I don't want him to skip the country either. So I'm like, all right. Well, about that time, the mail calls me up all frantic and saying, yeah, I know what he goes, I've called up the other guy and I begged him to take the job, and he's agreed to do it. So I called the first guy up, and he said, yeah, I agreed to go ahead and do it. They called me up, begging me frantic. And he goes, I said, now, just so you know, this other company has quoted them $13,000. And he said, yeah, I know. He goes, I'm pretty sure they're just taking advantage of them. He goes, I'm going to go ahead and do it. I said, okay, just so you know, once you take possession of them, you don't do anything legit. If I find out you did something illegit with them, you're on the hook. He goes, yeah, I know. He goes, I'll give you all the paperwork. I take it to such and such facility down, south of, and they're incinerated. And I'll send you whatever paperwork.
Well, why do you care? Because at this point, your decision is,
I don't want to pass the buck.
Well, I mean, how much fucking time and resources are you investing to this? You tell the defendant,
this is what
you take care of this shit, or I'm going to fucking file on you. He finds you a company. The company's legit. You've done your your due diligence.
I still need a CYA, and
so up to what point?
If someone, until I get the receipt from the facility showing he's delivered them to them and they've incinerated it, which is what happened.
It sounds like a colossal pain in the fucking ass.
So murder's real easy. Anybody who intentionally murders someone.
I think there are some investigators that would disagree with you.
Well, the statute's easy to interpret, whereas illegal dumping, so household trash in your front yard that you generated there at the house and you dump in your front yard, not illegal dumping. It's nuisance abatement. It's trash or litter within 300 feet of a roadway if you're within 300 feet of a roadway, but it's not illegal dumping. On the other hand, you start throwing worn machine parts or trash that is not generated from your household. Well, now that is illegal dumping. So it gets. I guess what I'm trying to point out is illegal dumping can be a little hard to interpret sometimes.
Thank you. By the way, thank you for dispelling the belief that investigating environmental crimes is boring.
Right. Thank you. So it has its moments.
$64,000 question. Patrol or investigations?
I love investigations. Love piecing it together, putting it all together, and having everything come together and finding out who did it, and then going after them.
I'm with you, too. I liked doing it on patrol, but I love a good investigation. I like to ask my guests, because I was pretty good at it. I think I'm a fairly decent investigator. You notice something. You see the butt of the gun sticking out. You find the guy on Accurant or T-Lo. You make the link between. Give me a case where that one you notice, like, I got you, motherfucker.
I'll have to give credit to my partner who first noticed it, but I'd like to think I would have noticed it as well. We had a DWI New Year's Eve, the morning of New Year's Eve, about 3 years ago when I first started with this agency. And they had wrecked out in the yard. And the resident of that house was not home. They were out of town or whatever. And so anyway, they hit the front of the house and didn't really actually hit the house itself. Crashed through some trees, uprooted some very large trees with a 3/4-ton Chevy truck or whatever brand it was. And I mean, just totaled this truck out. And we don't see the drive. We see empty beer cans and full beer cans everywhere in the inside of the truck. And you could tell they're cold. And so they obviously were recently purchased. We don't see the driver anywhere. And so we start looking around in some of the surrounding fields, and it's sort of a neighborhood, but sort of surrounded by empty cotton fields. And fire department finds a person laying about 50 yards away from this house, behind it, passed out. And so we walk up to him and we're like, hey, you okay? And he kind of wakes up and he doesn't appear to be harmed. And he basically indicates that he is a victim of a carjacking and that he just escaped and they wrecked his truck out. Doesn't know where he was when he got carjacked. Doesn't know where he's coming from. Smart. He's not from the area.
Smart.
Right. And
not the worst DWI alibi I've ever heard.
Right. And so he's basically claiming that he escaped and the other guys wrecked out and he escaped out the not the driver's side, but the passenger side. And, well, that's when my partner finds his car keys in his pocket. And And so he swears up and down he's not drinking, but you can kind of smell it on him. And you can tell he's intoxicated. And so I kept asking him if he'd do a SFST, and they transported him to the hospital, and he still kept denying it, and getting kind of belligerent about it. But I was being very polite.
Now, how do you find the keys in his pocket? Did you search them?
We just happened to see him in there. They were kind of coming out. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Did you ask him, hey,
how'd you get your keys?
Yeah,
and
whose keys are those? I mean, at some point you have to make the link that the keys are to this car, right?
Right, and they were. And so...
How'd you find that out?
I just matched them up with the car. I mean, just walked right over there and, yeah, that's the car.
So you asked him. Key. You asked him for the keys. Can I see those keys in your pocket? And
yes.
You stuck it in the ignition.
And we
of the
asked
car?
him, if you got carjacked, why do you still have your car keys?
Right.
And he didn't have an answer for that. So he's sitting on the gurney in the ER, and he basically he's being belligerent. And so finally, I said, "Will you just let me check your eyes real quick, just to make sure you're okay?" And so he finally submits to an HGN while he's sitting on the gurney, and he's 6 for 6 out of 6 clues. And so got a blood warrant and got a blood draw. He was not happy about that.
Did he refuse?
He refused.
Mm-hmm.
And so his wife called up dispatch, and then dispatch put the wife through to us. And he lived, I'm not going to say what city, but he lived a good 35, 40
mm-hmm.
miles, a good 45-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't work in our area at
mm-hmm.
all. And so she had no clue what he was doing there, but she swears to me he never drinks, ever. I said, well, he did tonight. No, that's impossible. I was like, well, I'm telling you, you can smell it on him. And so anyway, we booked him in, and later we got the blood test results, and I can't remember exactly, but it was well over 0.10 or well over 0.08, but it was more like 0.16, 0.18. So I mean, he had something to drink.
mm-hmm.
So
you were on patrol at one point, right?
Yes.
And the way you and I actually know each other is we were co-SFST, and we went to the SFST instructor school together.
Correct.
And then we've kept in touch over the years, and at some point you got on teaching SFST with me, and you've seen me in action. You know how passionate I am about the DWIs and stuff like that. My biggest thing with guests who come on here, and then of course departments in general, is nobody gives a fuck about DWIs.
Right.
Do you feel like you yourself hit DWIs pretty hard? Do you feel like your agency takes DWIs pretty hard?
So when I got to this current agency about 4.5 years ago,
nobody's verifying this. You know that, right? You could literally say anything. Try this. When I got to this agency 412 years ago, who's going to be like, hey! So you can literally say anything you want.
Okay, so when I got with this agency a while back, they had, I believe they might have had one intoxilizer operator
mm-hmm.
out of everybody patrol, and I'd say we have about 40 guys, when we're fully staffed, about 10 on each shift, roughly, and that's including supervisors. And so I believe there was one supervisor who at one time was intoxilizer certified, might have still been, but he worked day shift. And of course, myself.
They put the intoxilizer operator on day shift?
He's a supervisor and has tenure. And so...
So you basically didn't have one.
In fact, I was told by one of the patrol officer, one of the patrol officers that, DA's office won't take intoxilizer results. I'm like, then why are they paying? Why do they have one at our jail?
What does that mean? They won't take intoxilizer.
They want blood. We only get blood. I go, why? I mean, what if they
I
agree?
think that's a misstatement.
Right. Oh, I didn't believe him. I knew he was wrong.
Yeah.
I was like, why are they paying a technical supervisor X amount of dollars per year to maintain this $5,000 instrument that's over at the jail?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know.
Well, they don't. The county doesn't pay.
Somebody's paying them. Actually, some counties do. And so, in fact, I specifically tell you.
Counties who have employed, large counties who have a forensic technician employed.
And at this county, there's actually 3 employed, but they also handle other counties. So, or other counties' programs.
So is your technical supervisor, or at the time was the technical supervisor an employee of the county?
Well, somebody's paying him. How about that?
Yeah. So a lot of times so there are very few. I'll give you an example. El Paso PD, the city of El Paso,
Right.
they have an employee, a city of El Paso employee, who's a scientist, who is the local TS and
Right.
monitors the instruments.
And I know San Patricio County does too, because I've seen their payroll.
But I think a lot of you'd be hard pressed to find one here in DFW. When you have, so were you are you an operator?
I was until
So you were an operator when you first got on with
Yes,
this agency.
absolutely.
All right. So they got a grumpy old sergeant on day shift who's an operator, and then they got you. You're on what, nights?
Nice, yes. And
Okay.
so now
It's clear to me by this statement from this fucking idiot who said this to you that your agency didn't, at least then, take DWI seriously.
I would probably say that's correct. Now
Things have changed.
radically,
And
we
who-
actually have a
who-
DWI unit.
And who would you attribute that to?
Being humble, I would say I had maybe a little to do with. Now we have several intoxilizer operators. And I've had several guys that I worked with on patrol that I was like, how about instead of doing the blood, we just go over to the jail and I'll run him through the intoxilizer. And they're like, man, that is so much easier.
No shit.
And of course, you look at the stack of test results, and of course, it's obvious because DPS and several other agencies, it's a stack of them. So obviously, the DA's office there is obviously taking those blood test results. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the intoxilizer reports.
Yeah, it would be a total. It would
Right.
And this is a lesson, and I want to get back to giving you credit for kind of spearheading this, because I think you're letting yourself off too easy. You're a smart guy. You're passionate about DWIs. Don't worry, I'm about to insult you. That boring ass fucking environmental investigation. Goddamn. But I'll get back to that in a second. But the point I wanted to make is these dumb fucking cop myths.
Right.
They're fucking pervasive in Texas.
Sure.
They're pervasive in every state. One fucking cop says one fucking stupid thing, and nobody goes, that doesn't sound right. But everybody accepts it as gospel. You know, but why do they do that? Because they don't want to fucking do DWIs.
Right.
There are so many of these stupid myths, right? And we don't got time to go through them all, but, I'll just run through them. Oh, you shall arrest on domestic violence. Cops can't be offended. Oh, if you get a good case that's a Class B or above, don't write them a summons for the underlying offense because they'll defeat that in fucking city court. There'll be fruits of a poisonous tree. Oh, this fucking stupid. All these fucking stupid cop myths. And kudos, getting back to giving you props, kudos to the guys who say, wait a minute, that's not right. Now, I'll give you more credit in that guys like me go, that's stupid, that's fucking bullshit, you're fucking full of shit, you look like shit, you smell like shit, and you fucking shit out shit, then you fucking take that shit and you eat it and you become more shit. You had the grace to say, hey guys, why don't we try this? So it's a perfect blend of passion meets motivation meets innovation.
Right.
And you start suggesting things, and at some point now you have a DWI unit, so you guys are out there, you're hitting the DWIs.
Now we have several intoxilizer operators. Mm-hmm. We have several guys and girls who go out and get them. Mm-hmm. And so I would say,
rare to find a county SO that takes DWI seriously. Most don't.
And I'll give you a really bad example of that. There's a county down in South Texas, not one I've not worked for them. I have friends that work there. One of their dispatchers about 2 years ago was hit by a head-on collision in the area and killed instantly by a DWI driver. Mm-hmm. She gotten a promotion at work and just got blitzed, heavily intoxicated, and somebody made the mistake of not helping her out and keeping her out of a car. Mm-hmm. And we had 2 people killed on the bridge. I'm sorry.
No, nobody's sitting here Googling it. Nobody's fact.
Well, I still like to get it correct.
And those are 2 lives that could have been saved.
Exactly. And injured somebody else. I don't know if it's permanently or not. And of course, the offending driver, she's still alive and possibly paralyzed, if I recall correctly.
Hopefully in prison.
They haven't been adjudicated yet. They're still dragging their feet on. And I don't know if they're dragging their feet on it, but they just haven't.
But charged, right?
And so.
But charged.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And did she commit the offense in the county she worked in?
Well, she was one. Actually, she was a supervisor or newly promoted supervisor for the bridge that's being built down there.
Mm-hmm.
My friend was a dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
She was the victim.
Okay.
And so, well, she worked for a county sheriff's office, and it's now. I could be wrong because I don't work down there, and I do have friends, but it's my understanding that you would think the first thing they would do, because she was very well thought of,
Mm-hmm.
is everybody make damn sure we're up to date on this stuff and start going after them, just for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unfortunately, I don't think that's happened.
Why?
I don't know.
Well, you work with a lot of guys. You work with a lot of girls.
I know their policy in the past has been, so when they have a traffic accident, DPS does it, which a lot of counties are like that. I know county is.
Oh, but you guys will fucking trip over yourselves to get a fucking joint, right? You'll trip over yourselves
Not myself,
to get
no.
a fuck. I don't mean you specifically.
Oh, a lot of people will. Correct.
You'll fucking kill yourselves for a fucking state jail amount
Sure.
of fucking coke.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a fucking baggie that somebody's using on the, you know, which I'm not saying shouldn't be illegal, but
Right.
a DWI.
And I've told people, I said, you make that arrest, you probably save their life and probably
No, there's no probably.
Yeah.
There's no fucking probably. Let's just make it very clear.
Right.
You got into this job to okay, you ready for the oral board?
Sure.
Right. Think back, right? Why Mr. Bob, why do you want to work at this? 'Cause I want to serve and protect, and I think this city/county is so great, and the mayor, and I did research on Wikipedia. It was founded in 1870. All the stupid bullshit answers, right? We got into this to serve
Right.
and protect and sliding it across car hoods. If you want to make an appreciable, daily, empirical, self-initiated difference on a day-to-day fucking basis, you go out there, you do your fucking job, which is the motto of the show, and you enforce DWIs.
Yep.
Instead of shirking your fucking duties.
Right.
I had another guest who said, we don't get to be bad at any one thing. We have to be good at everything.
Right.
We have to be good at everything.
And, it's I think I've told you about this before. I remember I'd worked 3 days. I was at the tail end of working 3 days straight, which for us, that's when you work patrol at my current agency, it's 3 12s, 2 off, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I was at the tail end of that third 12, and of course you're just ready to go home. And I was working day shift because it wasn't my choice. I was working day shift at that time. And so a reckless driver call came out, and it was 4 o'clock, and that's 4:30 is when we get off. And I was heading back to the station, and reckless driver call comes out, and so they passed by me. So I turn around, start following him. And when I finally caught up to him, pulled him over, start talking to him, something's not right. He speaks only Spanish. And so after speaking with him and
Do you speak Spanish?
I do not speak Spanish. I had to have a friend who does speak Spanish, who's in law enforcement, called him up on the phone and conversed back and forth. His cousin agreed to come pick him up because I don't see any evidence of drinking inside his car. He's standing straight. His eyes really aren't glossy or anything. Doesn't sound like he has a slur, doesn't sound like
You're not seeing strong signs
but
of
something's
impairment,
not right.
but you're just getting that feeling on
And
the
so
back
finally I
of your neck.
said, would you mind blowing into this PBT? And game on. As soon as I saw the results, game on. And so I'm like, all right, here we go. So 3 hours later.
You had him blow in a PBT without SFST?
That's correct.
Okay. And so you got a high PBT
Definitely high enough.
and you arrested him.
Correct.
Okay.
And actually had him submit to an SFST, and he performed very poorly on it.
Post arrest?
No, not post arrest. So after he blew in the PBT, went ahead and had him do the SFST, and he performed very poorly on it. And of course, I had to have somebody interpret to him over the phone, and it actually worked shockingly well. And finally, at the jail, he met, he's been drinking all day.
But no odor.
Very little.
Okay.
And hooked him up, or I had him blow into the intoxilizer, and I want to say like 0.16, something like, I can't remember what it was, but it was well over the legal limit.
Yeah.
And so.
But the point of that story was it was how many minutes before the shift end?
30.
Yeah. after 3 long days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you do it because that's your fucking
Because
job.
that's right.
That's why we pay you the little bucks, the
That's
medium,
right.
the medium bucks.
That's right. So, I will admit, someone named jumped up on my shoulder and said, "You know what to do." And I was like, "Yeah, I already know what to do."
Everybody says that I'm the I'm not the angel that sits on your shoulder. I'm just the angry fucking Chinaman who's like, you fucking goddamn fucking better not let him go.
Right?
But it really does boil down to do your job.
Yes.
And I gave you a lot of shit about, your boring ass fucking drum can story. But I mean, you're part of this system that has to function properly and do its job in order for the citizens of your county to prosper. They don't want 15 gallons of fucking horse goddamn paint or whatever the fuck all over the fucking lawn. And yeah, it's a colossal pain in the fucking ball sack, but you gotta do it. Somebody's gotta do it, and that person is you. And if not you, then who?
Right. And fortunately, the head of my agency does not like seeing dumping in our county at all.
Yeah,
he is not a big fan of that, but he doesn't like DWIs either, fortunately. So
and so it does, and kind of to your point, it starts at the top, right? You came into an agency where now was the head at the time that you came in?
Yes.
Okay, so you came into this agency, and the head, admittedly, especially with larger departments, can only handle so much, but you come in at a time where attitude toward DWIs, is very lackadaisical. You make this initiative, and the bosses say, "Hey, you know what, Bob, go ahead and run with that."
Yes.
Yeah, and that's good, right? We need a good administration to support us.
Because sometimes I know some Texas sheriffs are not real big on traffic because they don't, God forbid, we don't want to lose a vote. Fortunately, I work for somebody that says, write tickets if you need to, or if you have to, or if you feel that it needs to be done. Go do traffic enforcement. Go do your job. And so
he doesn't care if you make stops in the cities?
Oh, absolutely not.
That's great.
That's great. And that is rare.
Yeah,
for Texas sheriffs.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But, and my argument, even before I came to this agency, was like Las Vegas Metro has an elected sheriff. They have 200 traffic units, all on motorcycles. They're ticket riding Nazis. I'm sure they have to be. And the guy doesn't get voted, the incumbent doesn't get voted out every time. So obviously, I don't know. I don't know where they come up with that.
Well, the biggest deterrent to crime is patrol.
Right.
Is active
Is a black
police.
and white on the road.
Yeah,
right in front of you.
Police. Thanks so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing. Please rate and review the show and follow us on all platforms. You can hear us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Our website is nfipodcast.com, YouTube at NFI Podcast, and please reach out to us at podcast@nfipodcast.com. New episodes released weekly or whenever I feel like it. Help us spread the show, tell us what you think, and put a buddy on. I'll see you out there. Stay safe, and remember, do your job.